Okay, so this one is going to be relatively quick because I don't know enough about the issues at hand in order to make a more comprehensive video. So that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose is just to express my raw thoughts right now. Um, I want to speak about the unrest that's currently going on in France over the controversial labour laws. Now, like I say, I'm not going to talk about these laws in detail simply because I don't know enough about them. It's my understanding that the laws are intended to um, give more flexibility to France's labour market, but critics say it's going to make it easier for employers to hire and fire staff. In other words, it's exploitation. Now, issues to do with, let's say, the negative side of capitalism can be found all over the world, all over the Western world. In particular, where there's protests, every time there's a G8 summit, every May Day, and so on. But perhaps no other country quite does protests like the French do. I know I didn't articulate that very well, but I remember this was happening exactly 10 years ago, 2006. It was more or less not exactly the same issues, but I remember the student protests back then. And unless I'm mistaken, the issues weren't that different. And then, of course, there was the urban unrest of 2005. So France has a history of protests that very often turn ugly. That's not to say other countries don't. Certainly, the United States has plenty of examples of protests turning ugly, and we do here in the UK as well. But with France, it's almost like a theatre. It's almost like a roll call of performance, i.e., it doesn't matter which government is in power, whether it be socialist or conservative, whether it be Sarkozy or now Hollande, who's a socialist president. It seems that this sort of protest just takes hold in France. Now, I have a lot of respect for the Republic of France, and it's a neighbouring country, and I have a lot of interest in France. And I think my knowledge on French history is probably above average. Um, you know, in terms of, I'd say the average British person I probably am a little bit more informed, simply because I'm interested in history. I don't mean that as a vain remark. So I'm well aware of the concepts and the values of liberty, equality, fraternity. But this is the thing I have a problem with. And say what you want on this video, but why on earth do certain protesters think that burning someone's car or hurling blocks of cement at the police is going to achieve the damn thing? I'm sorry, but this is absolutely nonsensical. It's stupid. I really have a problem with that sort of protest. And I have to say, I more or less agree with what the Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve has said. He said that as a democracy, these aren't the exact words, but this was the gist of it. We believe in freedom of expression and freedom of assembly, but it doesn't give the people the right to behave like hooligans. And I have to agree with him. What I don't get right, I understand the anger, I really, really do. And I'm not speaking here from an ivory tower. I'm unemployed right now, okay? So my life isn't exactly rosy. But what does it achieve by burning someone else's car? Now, attacks on big business, I can understand, although I don't justify it, but I can sort of understand that. But burning someone's car, what the hell? What's that going to do? All it's going to do is damage someone's property, give them a very stressful day when they sort out all the insurance and everything, hugely inconvenienced. And you don't know the story. Maybe they rely on that car to bring their children to school. Maybe they rely on it for their work. It's nothing but selfish thuggery. And I do hope the people responsible for that are arrested and face consequences. Because I don't mean to. I want to be careful how I say this because, like I say, I have a lot of respect for France. Having said that, though, I don't see why this would be offensive because I'm not talking about every French person. France has 66 million people. But there does seem to be a hardcore element of anarchist thugs that always take over these events. I know people make jokes online like, oh, the French really, they put words into action and so on, but this isn't really a funny business. This isn't really funny. People get injured in this, and police officers face a torrent of vicious abuse simply for trying to do their job, and in some cases, protecting the right to protest. I mean, what is throwing a block of cement at a young police officer going to achieve? He's not some billionaire. He's just a guy or a woman doing their job. It's just fucking stupid. I'm sorry for the language, but I just think it's nonsensical and it is outright thuggery. I understand the anger. That's not the issue I'm raising. I understand total anger at the fear of exploitation here, as I understand it. So I'm not saying, oh, why are they protesting? And it's not like that. I totally understand the protests. What I question is using this sort of mindless violence and mindless vandalism. What is that going to achieve? I remember I was staying with a French friend in 2008, which was a few years after the urban unrest and the unrest of 2006. And I remember speaking to her about this, and I said, why did people burn cars exactly? Because it happened in her city as well, which was Le Mans. And she said that no real reason. They just done it because it was opportunism. So I'm convinced that a lot of the people that are burning cars and so on don't even care that much about the law. They're not motivated on moral grounds. They're opportunistic thugs. That's my opinion. I think they're just opportunistic. In many cases, anarchists. There is groups like Black Bloc who take advantage of these situations just to basically behave like political hooligans, which is what they are. And it's abhorrent, really, because all you're doing is hurting other people that don't deserve it. I mean, why burn someone's car? That's just stupid. And frankly, if I was the owner, I would be seriously wanting to get some sort of revenge. So it's creating a situation of anarchy. And it's not just in Paris, it's spreading around the country. This shit happens all the time. Now in Britain, we do have unrest, not quite this frequently. And in Britain, whilst there is clashes, you don't get quite as much examples of people burning other individuals' cars. One big example, of course, was the unrest in 2011. But again, it's a similar situation because ostensibly that was all about anger at government, austerity cuts, and all sorts of issues to do with that. But a lot of the people rioting weren't even, they didn't even care about the ideological arguments for and against. They just wanted the opportunity to rob, to cause criminal damage, and that was tragic what happened. There was a lot of people burnt out of their homes, there was businesses destroyed, and there were people killed. I think as many as 5 people actually lost their lives in that. Um, so this is a slightly concerning situation because it is spreading beyond Paris, and I agree with Bernard Cazeneuve. People have a right to be angry. They have a right to protest. They do not have a right to just cause mindless damage and terrorize their fellow citizens. It's unbelievably stupid. And if people are going to say, the police are overreacting or something, because you always get those allegations in the cases, I've always made my position clear. The police should be responsible and they shouldn't, respond proportionately. But frankly, when they're getting pieces of concrete thrown at them, they may have riot gear, but that's still dangerous. And I have heard reports that a number of police officers being injured. So I don't blame them for defending themselves and charging those protesters with batons. Okay? Because if you're going to act like a thug, then you have to expect the consequences. And like I said, I'm not saying this from an ivory tower. I'm unemployed. I feel angry about austerity. I feel angry about the inequality in this country and about a lot of the issues that we are facing. But it is not an excuse. I can be angry at the government for whatever, for the issues that I face in the job centre or whatever. But if I go out and decide to burn one of my neighbour's cars, I would be arrested as a criminal thug, and that would be justified. There's no excuse for what they're doing, and it's not going to win wider sympathy. It's just not.